Hello and welcome to another. I'm just going to check the audio real quick because I'm doing this a little differently than normal. And there goes my intro. But anyway, there we go. So anyway, welcome to the first new episode of our old show, Frags and Beer Radio. If you guys remember the last show, it's been gone or it's been on hiatus for a couple years now. And myself and Russell Michaels, we used to discuss, current events and news that seemed interesting, might be interesting to geeks and nerds and people who like technology and gaming and all of that stuff. But it became kind of a time-consuming thing to set up news stories and interviews and get guests and all of that stuff. But I wanted to bring it back to another format. Something that might be interesting, and I heard a podcast, and you'll have to excuse the scruffiness. I'm usually a little more clean shaven than this, but my shaver died yesterday, and I had to charge it, and I haven't had time to shave. As you might imagine, it's quite a lengthy process to shave the head. So I haven't done it yet, but for Saturday randomness, you'll see the shiny, glowing dome and all of that stuff tomorrow morning. Anyway, I was watching a podcast by Captain Frugal. If you haven't seen his channel, go check him out. He talks a lot of comic book stuff usually. Great guy, very interesting guest usually. But he was talking to Peter Samedi, and from Alternate Comics, and Peter had mentioned, or Captain Frugal had asked, what is it that we can do as fans and collectors and people who buy comic books and who consume the entertainment media, what can we do to help the industry, especially the comic book industry, which is struggling for multiple reasons, whether it be distribution problems, whether it be the market expanding outside of the big two, or whether it be the big two changing so drastically that fans are leaving. The industry is changing. It's losing money. It's losing a huge amount of market share across the board. No matter what they tell you, no matter what Marvel or DC says, those guys are hurting. And so what can we do to help? Peter said one of the things you can do is try to spread some of the positive. It's so easy to drop the negative. It's so easy to say what you don't like about a comic book or a movie or a video game or whatever it might be. But what could really help is to talk about the positive. So that got me to thinking, and I'm like, you know what, I should probably get back on Frags and Beer Radio, if you guys watch. And part of the thing I'm going to do is talk about my weekly pull list for comic books, but I'm also going to talk about anything good. I'm not going to be able to get away from all the criticism and all the negativity, but I do want to share the things I like and try to promote those things that I enjoy, and hopefully it will help you guys find some new stuff. So anyway, this is a live show, so excuse any of the flubs. Just like the last one, things can go goofy. I may have guests. I don't know. This show could evolve. We'll see what's going to happen. But today's show is just me. I'm going to talk about a few things. Probably be on for about an hour or so, and we're just going to discuss. If you have questions or anything you want to hear, anything you want to know more about, drop them in the chat. I'm watching the live chat on YouTube and Mixer. Which YouTube seems to be really wonky for the last few months. If you noticed, it just dropped to black, and now, at least on my side of the things, the screen, the video quality looks like garbage. But on Mixer, it looks fantastic. So I don't think it's me. I think YouTube's quality is just not what I would expect on a live broadcast, but who knows? Mixer is doing great. So if you want a really good video quality, head over to Mixer/Frags and Beer. Mixer's looking really good. Anyway, drop something in the chat if you have questions. So we're going to get started after that lengthy explanation. So it's just me. We're going to talk about some stuff. In the news, we're just going to hit that real quick before I jump into talking about what's going on. But in the news, couple different things that I wanted to hit on. First, really quick, speaking about great things that I love, the Orville's back. If you watched last season, but haven't caught this season yet, this season is better. Right out of the gate, this season is better. If you haven't seen any of the Orville, check it out, especially if you're a fan of the original Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation and those older Star Trek shows and movies. The Orville is very much, I'm saying a lot, I'm sorry. The Orville is very much Seth MacFarlane's love letter to Star Trek. He's a huge Star Trek fan. It comes out in the shows. It comes out in the storylines and the characters and the dynamics. It comes out in even in the comedy, because the comedy that's there, which thankfully has gotten better. The first few episodes were really rough with the jokes. They were very corny jokes. They were very immature, which is what Seth MacFarlane's known for. But the show and the jokes didn't exactly mesh. They didn't work the first couple episodes, but they got better. But anyway, the comedy in the Orville is very much self-aware. It's very much an homage still to Star Trek and the things that we love about Star Trek and the things that we can pick at and laugh about Star Trek. Because it's not perfect. Obviously, it's just like any other entertainment. It's not perfect. It's got its flaws. It's got its goofiness. It's got its silly things that especially with science fiction, that we all stop and go, of course, that's hokey or corny or whatever. So anyway, the Orville's back. It's great. The first two episodes, the pilot, or not the pilot, but the premiere episode on Sunday and Thursday nights on its regular night. The second episode, fantastic. The writing on this last episode was great. Another show that I'm really, really loving right now, well, I guess it's a newer show, but I just found it on Netflix. It's called Happy. This show is about an ex-cop turned hitman who finds an imaginary friend, a flying blue unicorn, whose human girl, the girl who believes in the imaginary friend, is kidnapped, and the imaginary friend needs the cop turned hitman to go help him find her, the girl who's been kidnapped by Santa Claus. It's freaking hilarious. The writing is brilliant. The show is so strange. It's right up there with Legion and Dirk Gently, that was unfortunately canceled. Legion, I'm sure Legion's not going to last more than a couple of more seasons, if it even makes it through the next one. Those weird shows don't seem to last, which Happy is one of those really weird shows. I hope it lasts. I hope we get another season, because it's fantastic. So that's it for the TV stuff that I'm looking at right now. It's great stuff. Check it out if you like those shows. If not, I mean, give them a try anyway. If you like science fiction, I think you will like them. If you like goofy, weird, mind-bendy shows, Happy's a good one to check out. It is really, really clever. Need a drink. All right, so in the news, we got a couple things that I wanted to talk about. This one's going to be a little bit negative, but it is kind of a big story. You probably have already heard about it, but in case you haven't, Zoe Quinn, who, of course, infamous from, gaming circles all the way back to, 2013, 2014. Anyway, if you don't know who she is, Google it. You'll find tons of stuff. You'll find a lot of good information, a lot of shitty information. I'm not going to rehash all of that. Anyway, she got tapped by DC to do a comic book called Goddess Mode. If you go back maybe 2 weeks on my Twitter feed, I did read the book and I gave my thoughts. If I remember right, you know what? Let me not screw it up and let me just quote myself. I forgot to send that tweet. Here we go. What we're going to do is... let's see if I can find my tweets about Goddess Mode. So yeah, my comic guy got a free issue. He gave me the issue. And I gave... okay, so my initial impression of Goddess Mode. Robbie's art isn't bad. Robbie Rodriguez did the art. It's not bad, but it does remind me of somebody trying to emulate Joelle Jones. If you're not familiar, Joelle Jones is a relatively young artist. She has done... right now she's doing Catwoman for DC, which I also have on my pull list. It's fantastic. She's doing a wonderful job on Catwoman. She also did Lady Killer, whereas I first discovered her, the comic book Lady Killer, which had 2 volumes through Dark Horse, if I remember correctly. Both of those fantastic. So Robbie's art did sort of remind me of somebody trying to emulate Joelle Jones or Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy, last I saw him, was doing Tokyo Ghost for Image, but he's been in the business a lot longer that's the kind of art style that Robbie seems to have, but he doesn't nail it quite as well as those guys do. Right away, the dialogue in Goddess Mode, you're introduced to the main character who spends a lot of panels telling you how flawed she is. The character telling you how flawed she is. Complicated. I've never been a big fan of an internal monologue where the protagonist is telling the reader how complicated they are, how flawed they are, or how interesting. It's basically like if you were sitting there talking to somebody and all they were doing was telling you how interesting they were. If you could imagine a conversation with somebody you've never met, like here we are finding this person we don't know, this character whose name I don't remember because the whole thing was completely forgettable. But your first impression of this person is them basically telling you how cool they are, which is not, that's not interesting. I've seen that in other books. I've seen it in comic books. You hear it in movies sometimes. It never plays well. It never works. Nobody cares about a character who's going to sit there and tell you how cool they are. You're instantly turned off by it right away. So that was my initial impression. The first 2 pages, the dialogue was weird. The sentence structure was bizarre. It took me a minute I had to reread the first couple pages really to kind of follow what was going on. And then at the end, the dialogue, here I said it's a mess. I had to read some panels I had to read multiple times just because the sentence structure is weird. And that could just be the writer's voice. I know some of my writing, sometimes the sentence structure is a little strange. And some people do have a hard time figuring out where I'm going. So that could be what it is. But when you're reading a comic book, the dialogue in the story needs to flow a little better because it's not a novel. It's not something where you can spend pages explaining what you mean. A comic book needs to explain what you mean in the art and the dialogue within the panel, not over the course of several pages. And then the action panels, the action panels were awful. While the art wasn't terrible and the still panels, the panels where people weren't doing anything, those were fine. The action panels were almost impossible to decipher. So Robbie's art, while it was fine when everything was standing still, so to speak, when you got into motion and action from panel to panel, the art was just indecipherable. I couldn't tell what was going on. So that it just didn't go. It just didn't work. It didn't hook me. I don't care what happens next. It definitely wasn't a book where I called up my comic book guy and said, hey, add more of these, because that's what he does. He throws me any free issues he gets from DC or Image or Marvel, just in case I might be hooked by something new, might be interested in something. He'll throw them my way and I'll take a look at them. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, add that to my list. A lot of times I don't. I have to be really impressed with a new book. Sometimes I get middle issues like issue 4 or issue 6 or something in a run, and that definitely doesn't hook me. Every once in a while it has. It really depends. But anyway, so that was my impression of Goddess Mode. Now, on The Verge, author Spencer Bakuli, I think that may be how you say his name. But anyway, Spencer here writes this article, The Verge. Or I'm sorry, no, Spencer writes, I'm sorry, so sorry. I'm reading this off of Bounding Into Comics, not off The Verge. So Spencer at Bounding Into Comics wrote this article here about Verge reporter fails to disclose personal relationship with Zoe Quinn in Goddess Mode interview. So first off, this is what started all the shit before. No matter what anybody tells you, most people that were involved with we're just going to go ahead right now and say it. I know it's a heated word. I know people are all shitty about it anyway. What started Gamergate and what got all of that business rolling really was gamers and consumers' dissatisfaction with how the media and the gaming industry, developers and publishers, were seemed to be working hand in hand to, in their own little clique, sort of to keep us in the dark or to keep us it almost seemed like they were trying to manipulate consumers by whether it be actively or passively. Is a thing, and I learned a lot during that. I was at the time I had my site, I had Frags and Beer up for a while, and I had been writing blog posts and a lot of different things, sort of as a pseudo journalist for years. But I learned a lot when I started investigating why were people so upset about this particular case, and what does media ethics mean? What does it mean to be an ethical journalist? And these are things I had not looked into before, so I did learn a lot from that. And pardon me. And so when I looked into it, one of the big things that is important to consumers, and it's the law. Whether you like it or not, this is not just a suggestion. This is not something that you just have to, you know, now I'm going to lose the word, but the federal regulation states that if you are involved with, or you help somebody with, or you are paid to help somebody make money, these are things you need to disclose. Some things, some of these are suggestions, and in other things, it's a legal issue. For example, if a company pays you to say something nice about their product, you have to say you were paid to say something nice about that product. It is that one is pretty hardcore. Others are more like, you know, if you want to be a good journalist, these are things you have to do, or you are being deceptive. You're being unethical. And then this is the case. This is more of one of those cases, more of an unethical deception case. But this writer for The Verge, let me find her name, Laura Hudson, put up this interview. She interviewed Zoe Quinn, and it was a positive interview. It was very much a promotional, help Zoe Quinn get interest in her comic book sort of interview. And turns out they know each other, and they don't just know each other in passing or networking, or, you know, they're mutuals on Twitter because they both work in an industry that crosses paths, and they happen to tweet each other every once in a while. They, according to this Twitter chain, if you look at it on Bounding Into Comics, this article is released on January 3rd. So if you go back and look this up, you can find Twitter conversations in where they discuss having done and in the future doing karaoke together and meeting and going to parties or bars. Room again, flagpole sitter in the room again. So these two know each other. They know each other more than a professional level, and it's not disclosed anywhere in The Verge's article, at least at the time of this writing. And I'm looking to see if there's an update on Bounding Into Comics, because that would be important as well. And I don't see an update on Bounding Into Comics. So let me do one thing here. I want to look, because this is important. Always go to the initial source material. So I'm looking at The Verge right now. There is nothing. There's a very good breakdown of, a very positive breakdown of the comic book. And there's some questions, and there's still no disclosure that so as of this recording, there is no disclosure on The Verge on this article that these two folks know each other. So in other words, this is a very unethical thing to do. Hey, how's it going, Spinal? Welcome to the show, to the new show. So anyway, so what has happened here is this Verge reporter, Laura Hudson, who knows and is apparently friends with Zoe Quinn, did a positive interview and review of Zoe Quinn's comic book without disclosing that they know each other on a personal level, that they know each other outside of professional circles. And that is an unethical thing to do. So just like we started back in 2014, here we go again. Now, the comic book industry and the comic book media are not quite as closely intertwined as gaming media and gaming developers are, like PC Mag and Polygon, and all of those guys are very closely linked to the industry. Whereas, you know, comic book media, there's not very many of us out there. There's probably only 5 or 6 sites I can think of off the top of my head, and one of them is mine. And The Verge isn't really a comic book site. So what you have here is you have somebody, Zoe Quinn, who wasn't, I mean, now she's doing a comic book, but she's not really from the comic book industry. She's from the gaming industry. And you have The Verge, which is not comic book media. They just happen to have a section where they write about geek things because it's cool. And they know each other. So there's where that linkage comes in. So you have people outside the comic book industry doing a very unethical thing, which could very well start another round of shit, basically. So it's something to watch out for when you, and this is more information for your learning experience going forward. If you don't know the things that we journalists are supposed to do, like disclosure, was I paid for an interview, or was I paid for a review? Was I given a review copy? Did I buy it myself? There are certain things I have to tell you. Some of it required by law, and other things just really good business practice, things I have to tell you when I do interviews and reviews. And they're not being done all across the board. So it's something to watch out for. This may turn into nothing. This may be a big nothing burger. I don't know. But anyway, my thoughts on Goddess Mode, not a good comic book. My thoughts on The Verge, obviously, I've always thought they were garbage. I'm just going to put it right out there. They are an online tabloid, but they still make money with your clicks. So they have an obligation to be ethical, and they're not doing it. That's just out there. So make of that what you will. Be informed about what's going on. Watch those clicks. Make sure you're not hitting that clickbait. I'll hit it for you, so they only get one click rather than all of you guys do. So the other news thing that I wanted to talk about is this Blizzard Twitch thing. Now, there's a lot going around, and I was actually misinformed just by reading what people were saying about it. So I read an article about it today on PC in PC Mag, and so the breakdown, if you don't know what's going on, okay. If you don't know what's going on, for Overwatch competitive matches, Blizzard has required, if you log into Twitch chat to watch the Overwatch competition, Blizzard is requiring you to now link your Battle.net account with your Twitch account, so that when you're in the Twitch chat, your Battle.net account is there. You can see, people can see who you are. Now, it went around that Blizzard intended to use this to punish people by removing your access to all of your games on Battle.net. Now, from what I understand, that's not entirely confirmed, or maybe not even entirely true. It is still concerning that Blizzard thinks that they have the right to monitor your Twitch chat in relation to your Battle.net account. Battle.net / Blizzard should have no say whatsoever in what you do or what you say on Twitch. They should not be linked at all. This is a move to make Twitch chat more friendly and more of a safe space. So it's more one of those the good of the many things, stepping on other people's I don't want to say rights here, because it's not a right, but you know, it's just kind of shady. But anyway, there is no indication, there's no detail in Blizzard's announcement, and this is right off the PC Mag. There's no detail in Blizzard's announcement as to any consequences. So there are people out there that saying Blizzard will take away all your games if they catch you saying bad words in Twitch chat. There's no indication that's true. We don't know what they will do. However, if it becomes a permanent feature, then I can see Blizzard. So, and this is another thing that journalists should not be doing. So in PC Mag, our writer here ends his article with, however, if this becomes a permanent feature, because this only lasted from December 20th to January 12th, If this becomes a permanent feature, then I can see Blizzard considering punishments in the forms of bans, not only from Twitch chat, but also Battle.net. That's probably where people's idea of what's going to happen came from. Because this article, which let me double check, this article is not, okay, so it's not flagged as opinion, it's flagged as news, news and analysis by Matthew Humphreys. And Matthew took the liberty to insert his own speculation into a news article, and that is also something we as journalists are not supposed to do. If it's a news article, it should be the news. Here's the news. Here's what happened. Here's when it happened. Here's who it happened to. Here's, if we know why, here's why it happened. My dog is super excited to see me, and I don't know why, because he saw me when I fed him. So that's something that we shouldn't be doing either as journalists. So this is your learning. This is what Frags and Beer is going to do for you. We're gonna inform you about some of the things that journalists are supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do, and that's one of them. Journalists are not supposed to insert their own speculation, their own opinions into news articles. It's a news article. It should just deliver the news. So because of this, and probably directly because of this line, and I'm not a news, I'm talking about the news, I'm opinionating on this, or opining on this article here. This may be where people got the fear that their Battle.net accounts might be permanently banned if they said anything mean in Twitch chat. So anyway, it is something to watch, though. More and more companies are doing this. Patreon is doing this with monitoring what people do on other platforms. Twitter talked about this at one time, monitoring what you do on other platforms. No company has the right to suspend your service or take away a product because of something you do outside of their control or their venue or their platform. For example, Uplay. If you cheat on a Uplay game, you can be banned from your Uplay account, which would remove your access to all your Uplay games. Now that is you doing something on their platform that you agreed not to do. When you check the box on all the EULAs that we don't read, part of that says you're not going to cheat. And if you do that, then you lied to Uplay, you lied to Ubisoft, and you cheated on their platform. Now that's different. I think that's a bit extreme, but it's different. Battle.net or Blizzard has no right to do this on Twitch. This is a totally different matter. So keep your eye on that thing, but also keep your eye on news articles in which the journalist or the reporter inserts their own speculation, their own opinions into the news article. It's not a good look. Don't do it, dudes and dudettes. Just don't do it. So anyway, now we're going to get to the fun part of the show. And like I said, the show may evolve. The format may change a little bit. I may bring in guests. I may do interviews. But part of the show is going to be sharing the things I like and the things that I see. And every week I get comic books from my comic book guy. And the first thing I wanted to say is, and this is, I mentioned earlier, that DC and Marvel are hurting. And they say that they're not. They say that the numbers don't support that thought that DC and Marvel are hurting. But I can't tell you right off the top of my head that based on where Marvel was, just using Marvel as an example, where Marvel was 10 years ago. In 2008, Marvel was the top comic book company in the world. No question about it. They always had been. That year, I believe, if I looked up that year's numbers, they held all of the top 13 spots. And in the top 25, they held all but 3, I believe. So Marvel dominated the industry. They were way above everybody else. They had all the market share. Marvel was everything. Today, Marvel is lucky to have comic books in the top 5. I think for last year in the top 10, Marvel had 5 of the top 10. It wasn't even the number 1 comic. And most of those were number 1s. And here's the big difference to remember with comic books, especially if you don't collect comic books. But there's a thing that comic collectors do where they just buy number 1 issues. Whether I used to do it and I stopped because I don't have the money to do that. But some people just buy number 1 issues of everything. Just like, oh, it's a number 1. It might be worth a lot of money. I'm going to buy it for $3 now or $4 now, or back when I was doing it, $2. and hope it's worth something in 20 years. So we just buy it, and sometimes not even read it. We would buy it, bag it, throw it in a box, and not even touch it again. So a number one is going to sell regardless. That's one thing to keep in mind. Number one's numbers are always going to be super high because everybody buys them. And so Marvel, back 10 years ago, the number one Marvel comic book was Uncanny X-Men, like number 380 something. All of their top comics were triple digit, double digit issues of like Uncanny X-Men, Wolverine, those kinds of things. That's what they were selling the crap out of. Really high numbers, really high issue numbers. So today, when Marvel gets to, to get 90,000 in sales, like 10 years ago, 90,000 was easy for Marvel. They sold 130,000 issues of X-Men number 384. Now they're lucky to get 90,000 sales, or let's say units shipped, with a number one, and they release a number one constantly. Like if you look at Marvel's current top 10 list, they're all number ones. They're all re-releases. They're all rehashes and reboots and restarts and all of these number ones. It's like every other month you're turning around and Marvel's releasing another number one. So of course it's selling because everybody buys number ones. Now, when you look at those numbers, and the thing that Marvel doesn't tell you, they're like, oh, look at our sales. The numbers that you can find, and let me, Comicron, the site is called Comicron. If you go look there, the numbers, the way the comic book industry is done is numbers are based on units shipped, not units sold. So when you look at Marvel and it says 90,000 units, that doesn't mean they sold 90,000 copies of Amazing Spider-Man. That means they shipped 90,000. Presumably 90,000 were ordered by comic book stores and direct sales and newsstands. But we also found out that Marvel was double shipping some of their issues this year. So when a comic book store would order 5, they wound up with 10. And so when you walk in your comic book store, and I did it the other day, I went into the one in Peoria, and just racks and racks of back issues. A lot of Marvel, stacks of Marvel, just sitting on the shelf, nobody buying them. That's your indicator that the industry is doing bad. The other indicator is my comic book guy, who's been collecting comic books for 50 years now. He regularly pulls 40 comic books for himself over the last year or so every month. February, he'll be down to 14. He is about to drop Captain America, which is his favorite character from Marvel, and Superman, which is his favorite character from DC. He's about to drop those 2 books. When you've got a guy that's been buying comic books for 50 years and is about to drop his 2 favorite characters, you know you've got a problem. So when Marvel and DC sit there and tell you they're fine, they're lying to you. So what I want you to do is make sure that you buy books you like, ignore them. If you like Marvel, buy Marvel. If you like DC, buy DC. I don't like either one of them right now, so I'm not buying either one of them. But buy the books you like, share the books you like, promote the books you like. Give up on the ones that are garbage. Give up on the creators that are being jerks. You wait a minute, buddy. My dog is being anxious about something. I don't know what. We'll figure it out later. But ignore all the negativity and ignore the creators that are being jerks and the writers who are being awful on Twitter. Let them peter out and die, because not die, literally die, but their career. Let them go back to doing whatever their full-time job was before they decided they were going to become a comic book writer and jump on the bandwagon. Because the fans they're catering to do not have the attention span to keep them going. So that's what I'm going to try to promote here is not the negativity of oh, these guys are awful, these guys are bad. We're going to stop giving those guys airtime. What we're going to start talking about is good things. So that's what I want to do with the show, and that's what we're going to do today. And I know that was a long intro to this next segment, but hopefully next week I'll have more books. I'm trying to drag it out because I only got 1 book this week. Anyway, this is a new one that I just got. I was collecting Executive Assistant Iris, the previous iteration, or the previous volume, because I ran into Blake Northcott on Twitter. I liked what she had to say about comic book fans and about how she appreciated fans and how she appreciated the people that read her work and bought her books. And I really liked that attitude, and so I decided to look into her work. And she's written for Aspen Comics, she's written for a lot of other comics, but at the time she was writing Executive Assistant Iris, and she had also just put out Fathom Volume 6, a trade paperback. So I bought those. I wanted to read them, and I loved them. Especially Fathom was great. But I liked Executive Assistant Iris, too. So my comic book guy got me on the next run, Executive Assistant Iris, called The Mist of Chaos. So there's the cover right there. It's from Aspen Comics. Blake Northcott's our writer. Excuse me. Donnie Tran is our artist. And I'm not going to go through the whole story. But it does pick up where the last one sort of left off, and it initially, I thought it was going to be going back in time, because as you can see, our main character is in a time where she's either part of the Chinese or the Mongol army, horses, spears, armor, all of that stuff. But we slowly find out that's not the case. Through the book, we find out that she's caught in sort of a loop in her head. Anyway, the art is fantastic. I really like this. I actually like it better than the last run of Executive Assistant Iris, so we'll see if the art continues to be good in this one. The writing, Blake's writing, wonderful as usual. So far I have not been disappointed with Blake Northcott's writing, and I'm actually going to be looking into her novel soon. She put out, I can't remember it. Look up Blake Northcott, and you'll be able to find the book that she just like the most crowdfunded novel ever, or something like that. She made a crap load of money funding that through a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo. I can't remember which one of the ones she used. So anyway, this book's really good. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the art. So I think you should definitely pick it up. It just came out, so you should be able to get it pretty easily if you are interested. It is also tying into a new run of Fathom that is also, I believe, yep, Blake Northcott is doing that. Fathom is coming in February. That is also tying into this, because at the end of this book we find Aspen Matthews with Iris, and I believe it's also crossing over into Soulfire. So Aspen is doing like a 3-title crossover coming up with Executive Assistant Iris, Soulfire, and Fathom, and I'll be picking up all those, so I'll let you know what I think about them when I get them. And that's sort of what we're going to do. Instead of talking about all the bad stuff, I'm going to try to bring you a lot of good stuff. I know there was some negative stuff in this show, and there's going to be sometimes there. I mean, the world's not always great. There's always going to be something that we got to talk about that's not always that happy. But anyway, good comic books are what I do want to share with you guys, and I think Executive Assistant Iris is a great book. It's a great story with a great artist and writer, and I think you guys would really enjoy it. So anyway, I think that's going to do it for the show. North Valley Grimoire. Thank you, Spinal. Yes, the North Valley Grimoire is Blake Northcott's book. She described it as sort of a blend of a graphic novel and a traditional narrative novel, because there is some art in there. There's some comic book art in there, but it's also more of a narrative book rather than a comic book. So she wanted to do sort of a mix of those two genres and put that out there for you. I've heard it's really good. I haven't picked it up yet, but a couple of people I know who have read it said it's fantastic. So it's worth taking a look into. But anyway, so join me tomorrow for more Saturday randomness. It'll be 10 a.m. Central Time with more Pathfinder Kingmaker. And we will be playing more Final Fantasy III, the original Final Fantasy III, on Monday evenings. Next week, Frags and Beer Radio Live will come back with our second episode. Hopefully I'll have some more books to talk about, and maybe I'll have some happier news in the geek industries out there and things to share. But that's what this show is going to be about, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you come back, share it, like it, comment, all that good stuff. Find me on social media, YouTube links, or YouTube description shows all of that. And wow, the YouTube video looks like garbage on my end. And check out my book. My second, actually my short story collection should be live on Amazon anytime now. It's currently awaiting approval and publication, all the things they have to do on the back end to make it available. I will share out the links as soon as it is. Embers of Liberty is currently available on Amazon. And check out trevorbiersbach.com for my appearances. I'll be signing and things, mostly in Illinois, but eventually branching out. So keep your eye on that too. And thank you guys so much for joining me. Spinal, thank you for being in the chat. Anybody else who watched, I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great rest of your day and enjoy your Friday night. Much love.